What's up, y'all? Today is quarterly planning day for Q2 2025. If you've been following along for a while, then you've probably seen me do these for the last year or so, although I've been doing planning days for years as a business owner. So today is for Q2 25. I'm going to sit down and map out my goals and priorities and my roadmap for how I'm going to do all the things I want to do. And I'm going to tell you before I go and start the process, I have this list in my head of all the other to-dos that I need to do that feel more urgent than doing a planning day. Like I tell myself, I could do this later. I don't have to do it right now. But I ignore the voice and I go do it anyways because over time I have recognized how important it is, at least on a quarterly basis, to set aside this time and really zoom out and work on your business so that you can make sure that you are doing things in line with your goals, that you have the right strategy in place, that you're just clear on what you're doing so that you're not spending all of your time stuck on the hamster wheel quarter after quarter, year after year. Doing this process is how I have made the most progress I have ever made against any of my business goals. Actually had one of our High Profit Society clients tell me a few days ago, the last quarter's planning day that we do in the High Profit Society was the first time she had done planning with me. And she said that it's not even like all the way through March, and she realized that she had already hit all of her revenue goals or her goals for Q1 2025. And I think that that is amazing progress because when we set these goals, we're asking ourselves, what are the things we want to do? How do we make sure that we're continuing to step towards our vision that we have for our business and the way that we live our lives? Just making sure that we're all in alignment and that we're doing things in a sustainable way. And then asking yourself, what are the things that you need to accomplish in order to make your business, life, and your money goals a reality? And so that's exactly what I'm going to walk you through. It's like 78 and sunny and not humid. So I'm going to go somewhere, grab some lunch, take all my stuff, and start the process. So the first part that I always do is reflecting back on the previous quarter. So I'm going to look at the goals that I set and then using that information as I start to set my goals for the upcoming quarter. All right, y'all. So I am back now at my office. I did the first two parts of the process, which was reflecting back on Q1 and then starting to set goals for Q2. I have to say that this is always kind of a cathartic process where instead of giving yourself a hard time, instead of being caught up in your emotions, just sitting down and sort of non-judgmentally asking yourself, what happened? What went well? What did not go well? What were the things that we tested out that maybe did or did not work out the way that we thought they would? And what are we going to do about it? I'm not being judgmental about myself. I'm not giving myself a hard time for everything not working out perfectly. I'm just using it as data to really figure out the best way for me to move forward. And this is how we make progress toward our goals, is keeping our eye on the long-term vision of what we want our life to be without a time frame attached to it. Just saying, this is what we're going to work toward. We're going to become this person. We're going to take on this identity, and we're going to keep upgrading everything about our lives, businesses, financials, everything until we get to this place that we want to be at. So here's some of the biggest wins that I had from Q1. I will say overall, Q1 was tough. I felt like I had a lot of headwinds. I had a lot of challenges, personally, professionally, all of it. It was really tough, combined with everything going on in the world, adding to the uncertainty. I'm not going to go into all the reasons why, because it would probably take me an hour to explain all of it, but it was tough. And honestly, I think my biggest win was I kept everything afloat. I won't say that I necessarily expanded a ton, but kept everything afloat, did the things that I had to do, and kind of let the rest go, and I was okay with that. So one of the biggest wins I had was at the end of Q4, going into Q1, I was about to acquire another tax practice to roll into our existing one. And long story short, it ultimately did not do that. And actually, I think it was the right choice. It was not easy to make the choice to sort of backtrack. If you've been around for a while, you probably know we acquired another tax firm back in August 2023. And it was a hypothesis that I had to test out to say, like, if we can expand our tax roster, then that will naturally increase our referral pool, will increase the number of people who scale up into some of our other services. And I would say hasn't worked out the way that I would have liked for it to the point where I would say, I don't think it's better to acquire these clients than it is just to acquire ideal clients who want the ultimate services that we really love to deliver in the first place. Like, I think working to generate those leads and get those people who want those things versus the clients who just want to come in and do more of the compliance, check the box work, and then eventually scale up into the other services. I think that that's not the best path for us. I know it can work for some businesses, but I think for us, having tried it, I'm glad we tried it so that I know what worked and what didn't work about it. But I would say focusing on the clients who want the strategic and advisory support in addition to the done for you financial stuff that we do at Young & Co, I think is where we want to be. So I'm grateful that I did not go through with that, because I would have put even more money behind something that ultimately I think was probably not the best choice for me and for our business. Win number 2 is that because of that, I have a ton more clarity about the path forward. So after my Q1 planning video came out, I think it was in mid-December, it was literally like the day after the video went live, I basically blew it all up and kind of laughing about it because I just all of a sudden had this light bulb moment combined with the decision to not acquire the other tax practice. I was just like, why am I doing all these things? Like, let's sit down and figure out what's working the best. Let's sit down and figure out where do we have the best retention? Where do we provide the best value? Where are our clients the happiest? Where's our team the happiest? And I think having done that, I made the decision to combine the High Profit Society, which I had originally created as like a separate Sarah Young coaching offer. I combined it with our Young & Co offers. Always had this thought in my head that for Young & Co, for the quote unquote CFO service, we were only going to be able to provide certain things within that box, and that me trying to provide some of the more big picture, holistic, strategic stuff that goes beyond financial advisory, right? Like, we talk about business, we talk about mindset, we talk about life. I had this mental block thinking that I couldn't do that under the umbrella of Young & Co. And so I put it under my coaching offer. But then I realized that people might be coming in and getting tax or accounting support without the advisory. And if they listen to my podcast, if they follow me on social media, there's a mismatch between what they want and what they're getting. And so I feel like going through all of that and deciding to bring the High Profit Society into Young & Co, to add our monthly clients to it, which we're in the process of doing, and to stop offering things that do not include some form of strategy or advisory support, whether it's full done for you CFO or group strategy and group advisory support in the High Profit Society. But that just feels so much more aligned to me with what I think our value proposition is. And I think had I not gone through everything that I've gone through in the last 2 years of trying different things to scale my business beyond where we were, I don't think I would have landed there. So I'm grateful for that, as hard as it was. I'm really grateful because I feel like I have so much more clarity now. Win number 3 was I did a lot more socializing and visibility stuff. I spoke at an event for the first time in a while. I got lunch or coffee with more friends that I hadn't seen in a while. I went to a retreat. I did more things outside of just like sitting in front of my computer all day. As an introvert, I definitely identify as an introvert. It's hard for me sometimes when I get really busy or when I get overwhelmed by all this big stuff that I have going on, or when I feel unaligned with my work stuff. Sometimes I just want to crawl into my little cave and not talk to anybody. So I felt like it was good to sort of like get out of my shell a little bit more in Q1. The other big win business-wise that I wrote down was that we made a ton of improvements to our tax processes. Going through the rapid expansion that we did in 2024 with acquiring another tax practice, like I've talked about, it was a lot. And I realized that our tax processes were not where I wanted them to be, with me for 2024 not being the primary person who was managing the tax workflow. And so we did, in the second half of 2024, really like I'd say Q4, going into Q1, we did so much work around our tax processes. So if you are a tax client and you're listening to this and you've already gotten your tax return done, just know you were a guinea pig for our new approach to taxes. So thank you. Even if you didn't realize you were a guinea pig, you were. I won't say it went off completely without a hitch, but it was drastically better, I think, both from the client and the team perspective for most people across the board. And that just came out of recognizing, hey, like, this stuff didn't go as well as we wanted it to. We could do better. We could improve the processes. We did the work to do that, and I think it's paying off. And so obviously we'll keep iterating. I'm doing for taxes, we shifted to do more of a sprint approach. So thinking about like developers. My husband does data engineering, whatever. They do a lot of project management, like agile methodology. And so I took some of that and applied it to taxes, and I'm really glad we did because it's worked out a ton better so far. Still have improvements to make, but it's drastically better than before. So that was a huge win, I think, to make that just better for clients and team. Then I'd say personally, I made a lot of progress toward health goals. So I started what I call a 75 medium, which is my own customized version of a 75 hard. And I did 14 days of it after I got sick in January, like super sick. Then when I recovered, I started my 75 medium, was crushing it. Then I got sick again, pretty sure I had the flu. I'm mostly recovered from the flu, but still recovering a little bit. And so my goal is to finish out the remaining 61 days of my 75 medium, starting before Q1 actually ends, but finishing it in Q2. Even with what I did though, I will say I increased my overall exercise level. I increased my step count. I paid more attention to nutrition. I ate more protein. I ate more fiber. I did all kinds of good things. And so even though I didn't fully do a 75 medium, which is my goal, I still made progress and I feel a lot better. It's probably hard to see because I'm like sitting in this chair and it's like awkward wearing jeans sitting in a chair. But actually like these jeans that I have that I'm wearing right now, the last time I wore them was months ago and they felt tight. And I put them on today because my other ones that I like were dirty and they're not tight anymore. And so I'm like, okay, clearly I did something that worked in the last few months despite being sick. So that I think is a huge win. The next thing that I always look back at is the goals that I wrote down for the prior quarter and asking myself what progress did I make or not make, what worked and what didn't work. And so without going through every single one of my goals, because there were 7 of them that I wrote down between business and personal goals, I will say as a whole, I did not make a ton of progress against any of my goals. I made a lot of progress on some of them. For example, combining in the coaching and Young & Co offers, making lots of improvement to tax processes and all of that. But I think that I didn't accomplish what I would have liked to accomplish for my goals. Part of me wants to say that it was because of the headwinds that I felt like I faced personally, professionally, all of that. But I'm never one to blame external factors for my own results. I really truly believe that my results are driven by my mindset, by my thoughts, by my nervous system, by my feelings that I have, rather than external factors. So giving myself some grace by recognizing that I probably spent 25% of Q1, at least the Q1 work days, sick. We had a ton of school closures, holidays, my kid being sick. Also combined with downsizing my team and me stepping back into some of the work that I had previously delegated, which now takes up probably 40% of my total work time that I used to have free for other activities. So all of that said, I think that I feel like I did the best that I could have done. I don't know if that's true, but I'm not mad at myself. I'm not giving myself a hard time. I'm saying, you know what? Sometimes we have quarters where we don't achieve the goals that we set out to, and that's okay. So asking myself, what is it that worked and what is it that did not work? I would say the work that we did to improve processes. We also created like a client success roadmap for CFO clients, which seems to be going over well as we roll that out. I'm excited about adding our monthly clients into the High Profit Society. I think all of these things are really good, and I'm sort of set up for more progress in Q2, I hope. Now, when I look at my financials, I always like to go back and look at the goals that I set for revenue, for pay, for my expenses and profit. Revenue, despite not generating the leads that I wanted to generate because I did not do the marketing activities that I needed to do to generate those leads, we only were 6% under my revenue target for Q1, which I'm going to say is a solid win. Expenses were actually also down from the target because of team cuts that I made. And so those were less. I was able to pay myself what I wanted to pay myself, which makes me very happy. And then our profit goal was, despite revenue being down, because expenses were also down, the bottom line profit goal actually was pretty close to what my target was. Overall, not bad. Not bad at all. I'm not mad about it. I think the number one thing that did not work, that I think we need to do, that I need to improve going into Q2, is just consistency of lead generation. I think is something that, for some people comes way more naturally. And then for me, I feel like it is one of those things that will drop off my to-do list when I feel overwhelmed, when I feel busy, when I get sick, right? And so part of what I'm going to sit down and map out for my Q2 roadmap is asking myself, what are the non-negotiable things that I need to do on a daily basis? How can I use the huge library of content that I already have? And then who can I bring on? Who can I hire? How can I delegate in order to make those processes more consistent? The next question that I like to sit with is revisiting my vision and my values. I like to take the approach with goal setting of not necessarily setting huge annual goals, not putting a time frame on these big long-term visions that I have, but I like to set big goals for myself and I don't put a time frame on it. I say I'm going to keep working toward it, but I'm not going to say that I'm going to do this in the next 12 months because I just don't feel like it's always realistic. And I feel like when you have a big goal and you put a short time frame on it, there's also a lot more work that you have to do on your mindset in order to catch your mindset up, to catch your brain up to believing that achieving such a big goal in an arbitrary short timeline is possible. So I like to set a big long-term vision about the way I want to live my life, asking myself, what am I doing that's in line with that vision already? And then where are the biggest gaps? What are the big things that I could do to get myself more in line with that in the next quarter? And every single quarter, continuing to chip away at it. Some quarters I make a ton of progress toward it. Other quarters I do not. Without going into my huge vision, one of my biggest goals that I have, I said this in Q4, it's still true, is that I want to help 100 business owners build $1 million in net worth. That would be $100 million of additional wealth in the hands of small business owners, which I think would be incredibly impactful on the world. I've always said for Young & Co that I wanted to get it to like 2 to 3 million in revenue. And I didn't necessarily care to get it bigger than that because I feel like if I got it to that level and I wanted to sell it, we would be able to sell it for enough money to achieve our financial freedom goals, which is very much true. So to me, this is sort of like my floor of what I want to achieve. But in December, so I have my CPA license and I was doing my annual CPE. I was listening to these podcasts about accounting stuff. No offense to men, no shade, right? But I heard a lot of interviews with men who have accounting CFO firms making multi-millions, if not upwards of 10 million in annual revenue. And I thought to myself, if they can do it, why can I not do it? And so I like to ask myself, do I want to set this goal of, say, building a $10 million business at some point down the road? Do I want to set this from a place of fear, from a place of lack, from a place of scarcity? Or do I want to set it just because it seems fun? And so what I landed on is that I think that 2 to 3 million goal still feels good as a floor, but I've started asking myself, like, what would it take to 10x my business to get it to 10 million a year? What needs to be in place in order for me to achieve that? And can I achieve that? How can I achieve that without have additional stress, without having to work a bajillion hours, without amplifying a ton of problems? Like, I think a lot of people view having a business that big as automatically harder. And I always like to challenge that and say, does it have to be true that getting to this level has to be harder? Recognizing that going through growth of any kind is challenging and it does require a lot of internal work. But I don't think it's true that you have to bring a lot more problems on yourself and bring a lot more stress on yourself to operate at that level. So that's a vision that I have, right? So I asked myself, what are my biggest values? What does it look like for me to embody those values? So my values I listed were health, family, freedom, growth, and impact. And so what I did is I went through all of those and asked myself, if I was fully embodying that, like, what does that look like? And that helps me as I move into my goal setting for the quarter to say, out of that whole list of the things that I want to do, checking off what am I already doing, and then asking what are the things that I could do right now that would make the most impact, that would help me step closer, that may even make other goals that I have easier to achieve if I put those things in place. So I've lost count of the step that I'm on in the whole quarterly planning process. But the next thing that I did as I was sitting there at my table eating my lunch was I set financial goals. So that's my next step. Is I always like to ask myself, how much do I want to pay myself? Do I want to save, invest, pay down debt? Do I want to have any money for investments, any money for discretionary fund spending? What would I like for Q2? What do I need in terms of living expenses, but also what would make me feel good in terms of the amount of money that I would like to make? And so I went through, I added all of those up. I also went and I looked at my current business expenses. So all of the team and software and all those costs, added those up. And I said, okay, this is how much I need in terms of revenue. It ended up being the same revenue goal as my goal for Q1. And so I feel like it won't be super hard to meet it because for Q1, we were only 6% under it. So in order to meet my pay goals and profit goals and pay all the bills that I have to pay, it's not going to be a huge stretch in terms of new revenue generated, which is great. So if you want to calculate your financial goals instead of throwing numbers out that sound good, you can go to trustyoungco.com/pricing tool and you can grab my sales plan and pricing tool that includes a revenue goal calculator so you can input your numbers and see what you need to generate in revenue to hit those goals. There's also a pricing calculator tab and a sales plan tab so you can map out what you need to do in terms of sales in order to hit your revenue goal. So once I set my sales goal, I like to set a sales goal for the quarter and not necessarily on a monthly basis, although I'll do the math to say, what does that mean on a monthly basis? But your revenue is always going to fluctuate, right? So I like to say for the quarter, this is what I need to bring in cash sales in order to make all of this work out. So I take that number and then I look at how much do I already have booked in terms of monthly clients, in terms of any payments that we already know are going to come in. And I say, this is what we have booked. So target revenue minus what's booked is my sales gap. Once I know my sales gap, I then will break that down into what am I selling this quarter? Which of my offers am I going to prioritize and how many sales of that thing do I need to make in order to hit my sales goal? And so I'll set more specific sales targets for each of my offers. Once I know how many clients I need to sell in order to hit my goal, then I'll back that next into the number of leads that I need. To calculate the leads that I need, I'll either use my average close rate for sales calls, which is 60 to 70% in order to say, it'll say if I need 10 leads, I need to get 15 calls booked or something like that. Book 15 calls in order to close 10 based on my normal sales call close rate. Or if I'm going to do some kind of event, I usually will use a conversion rate of 10% to say, okay, if I want 10 clients to come in here and I'm going to close 10% of those clients, then that means I need to get 100 people into the event. And that just helps me in terms of knowing as I do my weekly planning, whether I'm on track with things that I'm doing to generate leads or not. And then the last thing that I do, which I'm going to summarize it, it's going to sound way more straightforward than it is, but the last thing that I do is I map out the lead generation flow for each of those offers that I'm selling. So I'm asking myself, what am I doing to sell that offer, whether it's a sales call or some sort of event? How am I going to invite people onto that call? Is there going to be some sort of promotion that I'm running? Is it going to be from emails? How am I going to nurture people, including that invite link? Like, what are the marketing activities I'm going to do to nurture clients along? And then what are the things I'm going to do to get in front of new eyeballs? What are the things I'm going to do to reach new audiences? And I'll literally write all those down. They almost never change for me at this point because I know what I need to do. Based on my Q1 goals, though, it's not that I need to try something different in terms of leads because I know what works and what doesn't. It's asking myself as I move into the more specific goal setting phase, it's asking myself, what do I need to do these things more consistently? But for other clients that I work with, it could be that you have a gap in your marketing strategy. And so your quarterly goals might not be, how can I improve the process? How can I do these things more consistently? But what do I need to do to put in place these marketing activities? What are the things that I want to test out to see if they work? And so for Q2, I think I'm not necessarily testing out a lot of new stuff. I'm more so just being consistent at the stuff that I already know works. So that was a lot for me to digest, to be honest, which is totally normal. I think taking the time to step back and zoom out can be a lot for some people. And so what I'm going to do is go take a break, drink some water, probably go for a walk, get some fresh air. And then I'm going to sit down and do the goal setting piece where I'm going to take everything that I mapped out and I'm going to turn it into 5 very specific focus areas for the quarter, and asking myself for each of these areas, what are the things that need to happen in order to hit those goals? All right, y'all, we're getting comfy here because it's been a lot to go through all of this stuff today. Whenever I do my planning days, I really try to not expect myself to do anything else aside from the planning, because it does take a lot of brain power and a lot of energy. So after this, I'm going to go chillax. So I took everything that I had reflected on, my vision, my financial goals, the lead generation and sales processes that I need. And from that, I made myself 5 business goals. Number 1 is the Profit Plan Challenge. My goal, though, is going to be to get people into the Profit Plan Challenge with a goal of leading into the High Profit Society, if it makes sense for people to do so, which is always funny to me when I say these goals of things that I want to do in terms of marketing and sales on the channels that I'm using to do marketing and sales. But I think you guys appreciate hearing the behind the scenes anyway. So my goal is to rerun the Profit Plan Challenge, which you're probably going to start hearing about coming up soon in the next few weeks if you're on listening to the podcast or listening to these episodes when they first come out. The Profit Plan Challenge in 2024 was probably one of my favorite things that I did in terms of community engagement and response from people. So I'm going to do that again. And so what I did for this goal, and I did this for all 5 of my goals, but I asked myself, what are the actions that I need to take in order to hit my target number of people signing up for the challenge? Because it's going to be double. I don't know if I said this. My target number is double what I had last year. And so number one of the actions is I'm going to have to do my own mindset work around believing that it's possible for me to double the number of people that I've had sign up for that challenge. I also ask myself when I write these goals down, what are potential obstacles that are going to come up that will prevent me from taking the actions that I need to take? And then what are the things that I'm going to do about those potential obstacles? Is there learning that I need to do? Is there a skill set I need to develop? Is there mindset work that I need to do? Is it accountability support? Is it delegating to my team? And so I'll ask myself, what can I do to put in place to prevent that from happening? So goal number 1, Profit Plan Challenge, which is targeting for mid-May. Just in case you're curious, we'll start to put the link for that on the podcast and YouTube once it goes live. Goal number 2 is daily outreach. One of the things that I talk about in the High Profit Society is the importance of doing a 100-touch challenge. I didn't track it very well. I ended up delegating this a little bit to my husband to help me with specifically LinkedIn outreach, which was a very interesting experiment. And it's something I want to explore more in Q2. Developing more of a daily habit, going back to my need to be more consistent with marketing activities of outreach. Just having conversations with people, trying to build relationships, I think is really one of the keys to having a successful business. And so for this one, asking myself, what are the actions I'm going to take? Who on my team can I get to help me with this? What potential obstacles will come up, right? So that's goal number 2. Goal number 3 is back to client work. So finishing out some of the ongoing client work that for the next month or 2 is going to take up a substantial portion of my time, making sure that I'm able to keep on top of that so that it doesn't cause me to work nights and weekends, so that it doesn't cause a lot of stress. Again, just going back to consistency. In Q1, I was sick so much and we had a lot of school closures in Q1 that made it really hard for me to keep up with the workload on a steady basis, let alone like it's not my favorite work to be doing. Wanting to be more consistent with that on a weekly basis. And so setting aside work blocks. So that's goal number 3 is to finish those. It's going to have to happen one way or the other. I guess I should say my goal is to do it in a way that's not stressful and then in a way that doesn't prevent me from doing the other things that I want to do. Goal number 4 is to find at least 3 in-person events to attend in Q2. I actually have one next week. I'm going to count as one for Q2, even though it's in the last week of Q1. But it's after I did my planning. So we're going to count it. So finding events to go to, because I think continuing on the socialization The visibility that I started to do more of in Q1, I think will be very positive. And then number 5 is collaborations. Something that I've had on my goals for a while, and things that I always tell myself, you should do more of this. And I always get interested when I hear clients say, I should do this. My ears perk up. So when I hear myself saying it, I have to dig more into it. Something that I feel like I should do more of is more referral partners, more pitching, more speaking, more podcast interviews. It's been something that's on my list, that has been on my list for a long time, and I've not made the progress toward it that I want to. And I sat with, why is that? Like, why have I procrastinated it? Is it fear or what? And honestly, what I've come down to is that I just don't love the idea of like this one-way pitching. I don't love it. I hate when people send me emails, cold emails, pitching podcast guests to me, because I don't even read the emails, right? It doesn't feel good. It feels very one-sided. And so what I came up with is, instead of trying to pitch all these like events or speaking or whatever, what if I just focus more on collaboration? So again, going back to relationship building, like doing the same thing of getting in front of other people's audiences, but doing it in a way that feels more aligned and doesn't feel so one-sided to me. And it's not something I've ever really pitched before, to be honest, is collaborations. But I like the idea so much better. And so I put that as goal 5. And so this is a really good example of a goal that I've never really done before. And so first step is going to be learning, like going out and just researching, how do you even do this? And who would I ask? And how does it work? And all that stuff, right? Which will feel kind of like a stretch goal for me. I also wrote down some other things that are on my list for Q2, primarily personal things, health stuff, continuing that, family stuff. I'm still studying for the CFP exam, which I originally had scheduled to take the exam this month. But when I let go of some team members and I knew my workload was going to pick up drastically, I decided to defer it. So I'm now signed up for the exam in July. And so in Q2, I'm going to be studying and things like that. But I sort of consider that like under my personal development goals and not necessarily business goals, although of course they're kind of related. I think that's it. One other area that I'm learning about, and I can't remember if I've mentioned on here before, but I'm spending time learning about crypto and DeFi because I think it's really interesting and because I think it is going to continue to be a thing, especially after seeing the government over the past several months get more into crypto also. I think it's going to stick around. And so I've been, over the last several months, sort of learning about it, not really dabbling in it, but learning about it. And it's something that I want to continue to learn about. And then the only other thing I wrote down was when I asked myself about what are the obstacles that I have to achieving any of these goals. I put external obstacles, but for every single one, I said my mindset was an obstacle. My mindset, my ability to justify why I don't need to do the thing that I said I was going to do right now. And so that is going to have to be just a daily practice that I prioritize, is becoming aware of those thoughts that I'm having and working to change my thoughts with the goal of changing my behaviors and implementing the habits that I need to show up and be more consistent with the activities that I need to do. All right, y'all. So I know that was a lot. Like I said, I'm going to go chill for a little while. I hope that it was helpful for you to hear the behind the scenes of my own quarterly planning day and what's going on with other people's businesses. So if you're still watching this, I would love if you would comment below with what your quarterly goals are for Q2. What are the things that you want to prioritize in the comments, just so I can get a sense of what other people are working on. So that's it for today, y'all, and I'll see you back next time.